Our job as strategic planners within an agency is to bring the consumer's viewpoint to the table. So when creative is being developed, that they understand what's inside the hearts and minds of the customers that are trying to be reached. And that goes into the creative brief. And at Wise, we think it's more important than ever to have strategic planning because it's harder than ever to get through. On average, we see 5,000 messages a day. We have more choice than ever. There are 400 to 700 new brands added to the TNS product tracker every day. More choice means sometimes it's harder than ever to make a decision. And there's also less brand trust. Y&R has been doing this study that measures various attributes of brands, and they've been seeing the esteem and admiration, even top of mind awareness for some of the big brands going downhill. And then, as you all know, the whole way that consumers shop today has changed. Multi-channel shopping environment has made consumers more informed. They have more choice, they have more control, and in fact, we don't necessarily control what the brand message is out there today. And then finally, multi-screen behavior is really changing what we need to do from a marketing and advertising perspective. So before, we used to produce a single commercial, we'd put it in the can, and we'd run it all year long. And now we have to think of all the different ways that you can engage with the customer. And at different times during the day, they're going to be doing content grazing, and the kind of advertising or content you provide has to be fun, quick, bite-sized, right? If they're doing the investigative spider webbing, they may be sitting at home at night with their iPad and they want to go deeper, and that's where you maybe provide opportunities for them to dive deeper and get more engaged with you on a deeper level, like a white paper. Social spider webbing, they really are there just to connect with friends and family. So if there are ways to reflect that mindset in the development of creative, that will help us connect more with our customer today. And then finally, quantum, this is where they just want to get things done. So if there are ways to give them an app that helps them shop faster, shop smarter, get better prices. So those are all sort of the kinds of creative that we need to be thinking about developing today. It's much more than ads.
First phase is the planning phase, and the very first thing you want to consider is having achievable objectives, so you need to start with the end in mind. This means that you want to know your goals and objectives right from the very beginning. It's the most important part, because if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, you can't find the right methodology, you can't ask the right questions, so you're not going to get the right results. So first consider who's going to be using the research, what's it going to be used to do, when it's going to be used, and then work backward into the methodology. And then when you're formatting the questionnaire, you also have to be very careful because you want to anticipate the responses you're going to get. So ask questions that are going to add value to your research. And then avoid complex language. Don't ask questions in a double-barreled way. Don't ask in ways that could be misinterpreted. So make sure you're very clear with your objectives and goals. It'll answer all your questions.
Okay, so the next thing that you want to do once you know what you're trying to accomplish is determine the methodology. And sometimes it feels like there's just sort of an infinite amount of research methodologies that you could employ.
The next step after you finish and you figure out kind of what your objectives are and the appropriate methodology, it's really determining what sample you're going to use. Now, the sample, there's, you think it's pretty easy. On the consumer side, you just call up a sample company and ask them, hey, I'd like a sample with these particular specifications. But don't always go with the lowest cost provider, and there are several reasons for that. The first is, you need to ask questions. How do they get new participants in their actual sample? Are they actually just pulling them off like one site? Or are they actually grabbing across multiple sites and then vetting those people to make sure that they're really who they say they are? Because there's a lot of people who will sign up for market research studies to get the money, right? Or the prizes. How frequently do they update their sample? Another key thing is they may have a great sample, but if it's 2 years old, people have moved and changed jobs and all that, and it's no longer good. The third is how are they compensated? That we want to move on to is execution. And this is about being objective. In market research, you have to kind of be a scientist. I mean, essentially, you're looking at the data, and it's just human nature to accept the beliefs that, that you agree with and discount the ones that you don't. When you get into market research, what you realize is that you need to have to sit back and listen to what participants are telling you. There's a reason why you're given 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's to listen twice as much. That old saying is very, very true.
So everybody familiar with the idea of outliers? If you have a bell-shaped curve, most of the population falls into the hump, and then there's tails on both ends. And what they found is that, a lot of times there's sort of the herd mentality and what everyone thinks and knows. And those people are not necessarily going to be the ones that are going to tell you how to break through with something truly innovative and different. Sounds like we've got something coming up on that, Dan, soon. It's very often the people that seem like a little off, that are a little out on those ends of the tail, that are going to bring something to the table that sounds crazy. I mean, maybe, the idea that you were going to be able to talk to someone without a wire was crazy. Maybe the idea that you wouldn't need to bypass fire to have light in your home was crazy. So some of those outlying ideas, when you hear them or see them in quantitative or qualitative research, just keep in mind those may be the ones that are going to actually be the biggest, most exciting insight that you can get. Okay, so we think our research is exciting, right? So most of the time when we're looking at it, it's speaking to us, it's telling us very interesting things. But sometimes, like Cindy said, you're swimming in the data and you want to make sure you can boil it down to something that your internal audiences, like your creative team, and your external audiences, your clients, can actually get excited about too. So you don't want it to be an expensive doorstop that puts people to sleep. You really would like to dramatize the results of your research. And simple is best, especially with creative people. I've learned over the years through painful trial and error. An example would be there was a particular product. We were trying to illustrate or dramatize what the marketing problem was that we were solving. And then rather than showing pages of pie charts and bar graphs, we actually had people take pictures of their junk drawer. And in almost every picture, our product that we were looking to do advertising for was living in the junk drawer. And so all of a sudden everyone got it. They realized the real problem here is that people put it in the junk drawer and they forget about it and they don't use it. So that's the kind of dramatization that you might have to boil pages and pages of research down to get that excitement going within your organization and with your client.